everybody, and welcome to the annual humiliation of this channel and my footballing knowledge. It is, of course, my reaction to my 2022-23 League One predictions that I made before a ball was kicked. And as I said, it is an annual humiliation for me. Even so this year, because to spoil it for you right now, I haven't got a single one correct. For the first time in the channel's history. However, if you were to convert the places that I was out in terms of a prediction into points, so for example, if I was 2 places out with a prediction, it would equate to 2 points. I've actually done better than last season, despite getting 2 correct last year. There are a few that I am happy with. I'm close with a couple of them, but as usual with this channel, really, there are some absolute rotters. So as ever with these videos, we will begin from the bottom of the table and work our way up, starting with the relegation zone. Bottom of the table in 24th, I predicted Port Vale, who of course just came up from League Two. I feel like this is just a standard easy trap to fall into to predict a newly promoted side to go down. With Port Vale this time round, while that they went into the season with an experienced League One coach in Darryl Clark, I just felt that they didn't strengthen their team. But the thing with the League Two sides is they keep the confidence of the players that got them promoted, or most of them do anyway, and we'll get into that a bit later. But Port Vale did that. I didn't think they really strengthened, and that was the reason for me putting them down. And to be fair to them, they looked pretty good in the first half of the season. They were actually high-end mid-table at the halfway point, but I think as many expected them to do, they faded away in the second half of the season and ultimately ended up finishing well clear of relegation in 18th. And fair play to Port Vale, congratulations on your safety, which I think ultimately that is what they would have wanted. It's going to be an interesting season next season. Obviously, Darryl Clark got sacked in the latter part of the season. He's been replaced with Aaron Crosby, who I think took caretaker charge in the latter stages of the season after Clark got the sack, and he's now got the job permanently. I think they'll be happy that they've survived, but I think the next task for them now and Crosby for Port Vale is to keep them up for a second season. But as you'll see with a few clubs, second season syndrome is very much a thing. And that definitely applies to my 23rd place prediction, which was Morecambe, which is actually, funny enough, where I had them last season. I just felt going into this season, you know, second season syndrome, I didn't really think Cole Stockton was going to be able to keep up the form that he had last season. Obviously, he had a ridiculous season last year. I just felt he wasn't going to be able to keep up that momentum because I think I said in the prediction video, Stockton realistically carried Morecambe on his back last year, and there was actually some difficulty going into it because, of course, Stockton, I think at the time, wanted to move away. He refused to play. There was like a contract dispute. He eventually worked his way back into the team. While he did make double figures and I think ended the season strongly, he was still nowhere near the same quality. And ultimately, I was correct. Second season syndrome did kick in for Morecambe. They didn't finish 23rd. They finished 22nd, but I did get correctly that they would go down. A very leaky defence. The third worst defensive record in the league with 78 goals conceded. Ultimately, it just wasn't enough for them. And I did actually have a sneaky suspicion going into the final day that they would be able to sneak out like they did the previous year, you know, when they got out on a final day of the season. But it wasn't to be this year, and it's going to be a difficult rebuild for them by the looks of it. They had 14 players out of contract, and they've all been released. Those names including Stockton, Connor Ripley, who had a brilliant season in between the sticks, and Dan Crowley, who I think made a superb impact as well. Another team that I predicted to have second season syndrome going into this year was Cheltenham Town, who I predicted to finish in 22nd. And the main reason being, there was seemingly a whole system change for them. You know, they lost a lot of key players. Will Boyle, their best defender. Callum Wright, who made a superb impact in the middle of the pitch on loan from Leicester. But I think the biggest one out of all of them was Michael Duff. You know, I think he was pivotal in their success last year, finishing mid-table. And he was obviously replaced with Wade Elliott, who I wasn't massively convinced by going into the season. Obviously, they managed to keep Alfie May, which was huge. However, I didn't think he was going to be able to keep up the form that he had the previous year, and they would eventually go down. And yeah, I'll admit I got this one very wrong. It was actually Cheltenham Town that were able to maintain their mid-table finish, finishing in 16th place. A pretty solid finish in the end for them. They've got to take that. Well done to Wade Elliott as well with the job that he's done. They struggled to find the back of the net this season, though, with 45 goals scored. Alfie May scoring 20 of them. So he had a ridiculously good season this year. Certainly was levels above the rest of their team. And obviously with him now having 12 months left on his contract, he wants to leave the club. So there's really difficult season ahead for Cheltenham going into next year. Obviously, if they lose their key player, which I've no doubt that they will in Alfie May, they're going to find it difficult to replace him. And it doesn't get any better with this next one either. In 21st place, closing off the relegation zone, I predicted another newly promoted side, once again falling into that trap of predicting a newly promoted side to go straight back down. It was Exeter City, and yeah, I felt with this one, again, it was the same reason with Port Vale. I just felt they didn't really strengthen their side, but the point I made with Port Vale, the teams that come up to League Two, they tend to keep the confidence of their side that got them promoted. They keep that momentum and it works. You know, going into the season, they had Matt Taylor initially, who was obviously fantastic for them and huge for them in their promotion season. And I felt that they had a decent attack going into it, well, decent amount of goal contributions and statistics among their front three in Matt J, Sam Numbe and Giovanni Brown. Even with Matt Taylor leaving to Rotherham, which I felt was going to be huge and the main difference for them going down, they did not look like going down once, I think, over the course of the entire season. And they ended up finishing in 14th, a fantastic mid-table season for Exeter. A really, really impressive team as well. I've been really impressed with them this season. Certainly the most impressive team, or one of the most impressive teams, should I say, that I've seen my club play this season. And yeah, fair play to Exeter. You know, they really, really were decent. Sam Numbe, 15 goals. Jay Stansfield, hugely impressive season and a really emotional story as well. Of course, playing in the kit number that the club had retired for his dad, and a really emotional story there, and obviously made a huge impact at the club. Dimitri Mitchell as well made a huge impact as well in the way that they play, coming in January. And yeah, very solid season for Exeter. Congratulations on their safety. And like I said, didn't look like going down whatsoever. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they do next season. Moving past the relegation zone, in 20th place, I predicted Burton Albion. Now, I will admit I was actually very close to predicting Burton to go down at the start of the season. I was just not inspired whatsoever by their squad or their manager. Not a massive fan of Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank as a manager, and I don't think I made the prediction, but I was thinking of making the prediction anyway. I was thinking of saying it in the video, that Hasselbank would be one of the first managers to be dismissed in the season, and I think thankfully for Burton's sake, he was. They looked doomed in the first half of the season. They just couldn't get any results together. Hasselbank got the sack, but I think as ever with Burton, they use the January transfer window to their advantage, and they just recruit well and they just shoot up the table. And they've done exactly that again. They've been able to get themselves out of relegation, and they have found themselves finishing pretty much in the same position that they've been finishing the past few seasons, and they've ended up finishing in 15th. Fair play to them finishing mid-table, although with the second worst defence in the league, 79 goals. So yeah, they're going to need to tighten that up going into next season. But once again, Burton getting themselves out of a seemingly doomed situation. In 19th place, I predicted the League Two champions from last season, Forest Green Rovers, and yeah, it's been a walking disaster for them this season. And I think I did actually say in the video, in my initial predictions, had they'd actually kept the core of the squad that they had and the manager that they had, of course, in Rob Edwards, I reckon they had the potential to finish a lot higher. But of course, there was a massive squad overhaul in the summer. Rob Edwards initially took the Watford job, and obviously that ended up being a disaster. And he's now in the playoff final with Luton Town, which is absolutely incredible. Watford's fiercest rivals. Anyway, talking about Forest Green, but yeah, they lost him, which obviously was going to be huge anyway. And obviously they lost a lot of key players. Kane Wilson going to Bristol City, Ebou Adams to Cardiff, Nicky Cadden to Barnsley, Matty Stevens, their leading striker, being out injured for the first few months. They tried to, you know, massively overhaul the squad and tried to recruit and players and signed a lot of players, but unfortunately, it just wasn't to be for them. And I think for them, they will have to go down as one of, if not the worst teams this league has ever seen. They finished rock bottom of the table, and it wasn't even close. 27 points, I think it was, 19 points from safety. The least amount of wins with 6, the most defeats, 31. The lowest scoring team in the league with 31 goals. The worst defensive team with 89. It's just been a disaster in all forms. Ian Birchnell came in to replace Rob Edwards, and he was a disastrous appointment. Duncan Ferguson came in to replace him. While I think he's got a lot of pedigree and he's got a lot of potential as a manager, he hasn't exactly lived up to the bill for his first stint as Forest Green manager. That being said, he's obviously can't do much with the hand that he's been dealt with, because ultimately he's been given a, let's face it, I would even go as far as saying a mid-table League Two side in League One. So it's going to be interesting to see how Ferguson gets on in League Two and him being given the chance to build his own team. But yeah, disaster for Forest Green this season. In 18th, I went with the bold shout in Lincoln City. It was definitely a controversial prediction going into the season, but I think ultimately it was down to key players that they lost, and once again their manager being changed. You know, Michael Appleton, while we did a fantastic job over the years, I think certainly faded away towards the latter stages of his career at the Imps. He was replaced by Mark Kennedy, who I think it was Lee Bowyer's assistant at Birmingham before taking the job. I think it was his first proper managerial job this season. And yeah, like I said, along with that, a lot of key players leaving. Conor McGrandle's big part of their midfield. Anthony Scully, their best player by a mile, him going, and obviously a lot of players that they had on loan that scored a decent amount of goals also left in Liam Cullen, Morgan Whittaker, and even John Marquis made an impact as well. Building a bit of a trend with Lincoln's predictions. I just seem to get them way off. I got them way off last season. I predicted them to finish in the playoffs, and they finished 17th, I think it was. I predicted them to finish where they did last season, and they finish 11th. They go above and beyond that and finish solidly in the middle of the pack, yeah, very comfortably in the middle of the pack. The draw specialists, though, were 20 draws in the league, so they were a difficult side to beat. You know, they fought fought for a draw or were able to hold on to a draw. Just a solid mid-table with the pack finish, not much else to really say. Fair play to Mark Kennedy. I certainly underestimated him going into the season and underestimated Lincoln. And then in 17th, we come to Accrington Stanley, the team that have exceeded expectations over the course of their time in League One. And I did say going into this season, I felt that this was the most likely season that Accrington would go down. You know, losing Colby Bishop, that is obviously absolutely huge. Their best defender as well in Ross Sykes. And I think a big part of their midfield in Harry Pell. Felt that it was this season more than ever that they were going to be dragged into the relegation fight. But I was absolutely convinced that under John Coleman, who knows this club inside and out, he was going to be able to keep them up. And unfortunately, it wasn't to be this season, and eventually their League One stay has come to an end. They have finished in 23rd place, second bottom, 40 goals scored this season. So there you can see how much of a loss Colby Bishop was, the second worst in the league. At a very leaky defence, which I think has been a common occurrence for Accrington. They've really struggled defensively at their time in League One, have shipped in a lot of goals. They conceded 77 this year, but honestly, going into the season, I just didn't think Coleman would be able to get that team relegated. I just couldn't feasibly predict it, you know, because I've predicted them to go down in the past and they've exceeded expectation massively. And it has been brilliant seeing Accrington do that, you know, finish comfortably mid-table and exceed that expectation. And it is a shame to see their League One stay come to an end, but I do wish them all the best in the future. Definitely a respectable club. In 16th place, I predicted Scott Brown's Fleetwood Town. Brown's first season as a manager, it was going to be very interesting to see what he would do, what system he'd install, what players he'd bring in. And I felt they really did well in the summer. I was really impressed with their recruitment. Of course, Brendan Wiredu, very exciting player, obviously did really well at Colchester in League 2 level. Josh Vella, solid League 1 midfielder from the likes of Bolton and Shrewsbury. Promise on Mashire, Sean Rooney made a massive impact, and not to mention the players they were able to keep hold of as well. You know, Danny Andrew being a big one, they were able to keep hold of. And in January as well, they recruited really well, bringing in Jack Marriott and Jayden Stockley. Felt that they were going to be able to get themselves out of the rut that they put themselves in last year. They obviously just about stayed up on the final day last year. I thought they were going to steadily improve, but they went a bit better than that. I said they were going to be 16th and they finished 13th. Solid mid-table, in middle of the pack once again, like Lincoln City. And fair play, Scott Brown's done a really good job there. Love a last-minute goal this season, though. They conceded a lot of late goals, but also scored a lot of late goals. So there was a lot of excitement around their team in that department anyway. But yeah, going to be very interesting going into next season, whether they're going to be able to keep up that same momentum and keep up the same recruitment, because I thought they did really well this season. In 15th place, I predicted Cambridge United. This was the League 2 side that got promoted going into last season that I felt was going to maintain their League 1 finish. Obviously, Cheltenham ended up doing that, but I felt it was going to be Cambridge this year purely because, I mean, going into the summer, or after the summer window, should I say, they didn't really lose anyone. I felt that they had kept the core of the squad. You know, they didn't really lose anyone massive. I think Jack Iredale was the only player that they really lost going to Bolton. But I felt that they kept the core of the team that got them in that position and comfortably as well. And I do like Mark Bonner as a manager as well. If it wasn't for their starts of the season, you know, 10 games in, they were 8th place and they were in and around the playoffs for the start of the season. It could have been a lot different. It went down to the final day and Cambridge were able to survive only just in 20th, maintaining their League 1 status. Sam Smith once again having another decent season like he did last year. I remember actually writing him off as a signing when they first brought him in at the start of last season, and he's managed to get double figures, I think, in both seasons, so fair play to him. Conor McGrandle's made an impressive impact as well, really good impact on loan from Charlton in the second half of the season. A lot of players, though, going into next season have been released in their retained list, players that have made a huge impact to their club, including their two strikers, Sam Smith and Joe Ironside, who I think will be two decent pickups for League One clubs, particularly Smith, who, like I said, has got double figures in the past 2 seasons, and he's only 25. So on a free, it's a very good pickup. But yeah, thankfully, Cambridge have been able to keep themselves up. Very difficult season this season, though. Not what I expected from them. I got that one well wrong. And then in 14th, we have the team that I predicted to be the best performing League 2 side coming up this season. And that, of course, was Bristol Rovers under the guidance of Joey Barton. Yeah, I think this was a given going into the season, really. Barton, an experienced League One coach with Fleetwood Town and obviously with Bristol Rovers in the past. I felt that, again, they'd kept the core of the squad that got them promoted. You know, the likes of Aaron Collins, Anthony Evans, James Connolly, who they signed permanently from Cardiff. How good was he in League 2 last year? Unfortunately for them, I think you'd have to say they've underachieved. So they finished in 17th. So not massively far off with that one, but yeah, I think a disappointing season, a really poor second half of the season. 21 defeats, 73 goals conceded. A big season though for their talisman, Aaron Collins. Really big season for him. 16 goals, 11 assists. No doubt there's going to be clubs interested in him in the summer. But yeah, can't help but feel like Rovers underachieved this season. I think a lot was expected of them. In 13th place, I went with Shrewsbury Town again. I fell into the trap of predicting them to finish their last season And because I was just so impressed with their recruitment, and they just didn't live up to expectation and finished really where they've been finishing for the past few seasons in League One since they fell promotion in the playoffs, or many years ago. And I fell into the trap again because their recruitment, once again, in the summer was so good. They recruited really, really well. Che Dunkley, despite not having the greatest time at Sheffield Wednesday, I felt was going to be a really good signing for them. Aidan O'Brien, at the time, I felt was going to be a decent player. Of course, he went out on loan in the second half of the season to Gills, but I felt the fact that they managed to get in was really impressive. And obviously the likes of Tom Flanagan as well, Jordan Shipley, Tom Bayliss are decent players there in the middle of the park. And I felt that they were going to live up to their mid-table expectation, and they finally did. It finally paid off. They finished in 12th in the end, so they actually went one better. And yeah, a decent season for Shrewsbury, finally living up to the expectation and their recruitment doing them justice. Although with a bit of inconsistency this season. They drew only 8 games this season, but they got 17 wins and 21 defeats. So you can definitely see a bit of inconsistency there. Luke Leahy, going to say it right now, the best attacking fullback in the league. He's absolutely fantastic. I've rated him for so long now, and a really, really good player. Would have loved to see him play for Charlton. 12 goals and 4 assists in all competitions. Jordan Shipley had a great season in the middle of the park. 6 goals, 7 assists. And yeah, really, really solid season for Shrewsbury. In 12th place, I predicted Oxford United, of course, at the time under Carl Robinson. It was quite a weird prediction for me to predict them to finish there, considering how good they've been over the past few seasons. They've been able to finish comfortably in and around the playoffs and even in it. Obviously not been able to go up over the past few seasons. But I just felt compared to the teams above them, they were going to struggle, and they were looking a lot weaker. Obviously, they lost Mark Sykes, big player in the middle of the park. Keeping Cameron Brannigan, though, was huge. They did really well there to keep him on board in the summer. But yeah, they did struggle this season, but I honestly did not expect them to struggle as badly as they did. They ended up finishing in 19th. They could very well have gone down this season. It was really, really a poor season. I think what it was with Robinson, really, he just took them as far as he could. His job was done, really, with them. He's obviously had a fantastic spell overall. It's just a shame the way that it ended for him. They struggled to find the back of the net this season with 49 goals. Defensively, they wasn't as bad as the rest of the teams in the bottom half of the table, but they just couldn't find the back of the net. Cameron Brannigan had a great season this year, 11 goals, 3 assists, I don't know if they're going to be able to keep him this time around. I fully expect he's going to be attracting interest. Billy Bowden did okay, 9 goals, 4 assists. Cole Joseph with 9 goals as well. 21-year-old, a decent spell at League One level again, on loan from Swansea. Of course, spent the second half of last season at Cheltenham and did fairly well. So yeah, going to be interesting to see how Oxford fare. A full season under Manning, a full summer for them to recruit properly. Going to be interesting to see what team he builds. But yeah, pretty disastrous season for Oxford. I predicted this team to finish in this position last year, and I stuck with it again this year. In 11th place, I predicted Wycombe Wanderers, and I think it was the same reason for last season. They just have an ageing team. I just felt going into it, they just had an ageing side. Their recruitment, they didn't really sign massive amounts of quality players, and I felt that this was the season where they were going to sort of tail off and they weren't going to compete with the playoffs this season. I didn't think that the players that they had, like I said, the ageing players that they have, the likes of Sam Boakes and Gareth McCleary, I didn't think they were going to be able to keep up the form that they had the previous year. Big thing for Wycombe this year was Gareth Ainsworth leaving, I think, towards the end of the season, taking the QPR job. Matt Bloomfield, I think his name is, he used to play for them, is now, of course, their manager. It's going to be interesting to see how he fares going into next season. Not massively sold on him just yet, but in terms of my prediction, I said they'd be 11th, and I wasn't massively far off. They finished 9th in the end, so yeah, missed out on the playoffs as I expected them to. And like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how Bloomfield fares over the course of the summer and in a full season, because like I said, they have got an ageing team. In 10th place, I predicted Plymouth Argyle, and I will hold my hands up, I got this one very wrong. The Pilgrims, of course, went on to win the League One title. First place as Centurions, 101 points. It's just been a remarkable season for Plymouth this season. They've really, really done well. My reasons for predicting them to finish outside the playoffs, I just felt that the hurt from them missing out on the playoffs last time was going to carry in to this season. But honestly, they've done really, really well. Stephen Schumacher, what a job he's done. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what he can do in the Championship this season. I'm really hoping they stay up next season. Ryan Hardy, Niall Ennis, Barley Mumba, how good was he this season? Absolutely incredible. Sam Cosgrove finally finding his feet. Many people forget as well that they lost Morgan Whittaker in January. How good was he, in the first half of the season? And he obviously got recalled to Swansea. I felt that when they lost him, it was going to be huge for them, and it's going to be like, oh, that's a bit of a stumbling block. But they were able to really recover, and they've done really, really well. Like I said, finishing as Centurions, deservedly so, have won the league. And congratulations to Plymouth Argyle. I will happily admit I got that one wrong. From one disappointing, mediocre and absolutely lacklustre season last year to another, but at least this time I got it correct. In 9th place, we have my club, Charlton Athletic, and Yeah, I got it right this time. At least last season, I didn't have the delusion of predicting us to finish in the playoffs. I said we'd be 5th last year, we came 13th. This season, I thought we'd come outside the playoffs, and yeah, I'm happy with that. We finished in 10th. I'm happy with that prediction. I'm not massively far off with that one. There was ultimately just a lot of ambiguity with us going into this season. Obviously, Ben Garner coming in at the time. We didn't know what system he was going to play. We didn't know how he was going to fare in terms of recruitment. Ultimately, he was sold a dream. You know, he didn't get the investment. We signed mainly League Two players, and yeah, just another disastrous season waiting to happen, really. Garner didn't really get the tools he wanted. He didn't get the correct backing. Obviously, when disaster struck on the pitch, ultimately he was the one who got the blame, and wrongly so, in my opinion. I still think even now he was prematurely sacked, even though the results weren't great, and you'd have to say that his style of play wouldn't be defined as the attacking style of play that he wanted to install here. Yeah, I don't think he should have been sacked. Obviously, Dean Holden has come in and he's been absolutely fantastic. A breath of fresh air, done really, really well. January recruitment was obviously a shambles, but then again, you can't really do much with Martin Sangard and Steve Gallen being your recruitment, and Thomas Sangard unwilling to invest because he's looking to get out with the highest possible bidder. But yeah, going into next season, it's going to be very, very difficult. Of course, Jezrak Saki, an unbelievable season this year. Obviously, losing him is going to be big for us. That's a big hole to fill. Miles Lieburn, obviously, he's been incredible. A joy to watch this season. It's been absolutely amazing seeing him step into his dad's footsteps and really step up this season. And other key players I've had this year, you know, George Dobson and Stephen Sessignon, losing him. And yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how we fare going into next season, because we just need to get this takeover done now. And it does look like it could be done very soon with the Josh Friedman improved bid being accepted recently, third time lucky. So hopefully it goes through soon. Ultimately, we just need the takeover to be done, and we need to put these past 2 seasons behind us and hopefully move on to a new era under Dean Holden, because he's been, like I said, a breath of fresh air, and the job he done in the second half of the season, I think, has gone unnoticed for a lot of League One fans. So fair play to him. But yeah, not massively convinced going into next season. It's going to be tough, not holding out much hope, but at least this time my misery was correct this time in me predicting them to finish in 10th place. So yeah, another disappointing season, but at least I got it right this time. In 8th place, I predicted the first of the newly relegated sides, that being Barnsley. I just felt, compared to the rest of the teams around them, I just didn't think they had enough. You know, they come off a really disappointing season in the Championship. Michael Duff coming in, of course, from Cheltenham Town. I felt it was a decent appointment. And yeah, a really, really impressive second half of the season has led them into the playoffs. A very, very impressive run. And they've ended up finishing in 4th place. A very good season for Barnsley. Michael Duff done a really good job. Devante Cole, 16 goals, 3 assists. It's funny how he can do a job at League One level, but just can't seem to do it in the Championship. James Norwood also hit double figures, 12 goals, 4 assists. Adam Phillips had a great season on loan at Morecambe last year. I thought that was going to be a really decent pickup from obviously being released by Burnley. Obviously, they picked him up on a free, done really well at Morecambe last year on loan. 10 goals, 9 assists, definitely lived up to expectation. Nicky Cadden and Luca Connell as well, 2 players they signed in the summer. They impressed, and yeah, at the time of recording, they find themselves in a 1-1 draw with Bolton going into the second leg in the playoffs. Barnsley, solid season, got it wrong, said they'd be 8th, and they ended up finishing rather comfortably in the playoffs. And then just missing out on the playoffs in 7th place. Once again, I did predict Pompey. I guess you could say the same reasons really for Barnsley. I just didn't think they had enough going into the season. I felt inconsistency would hinder them a bit going into this year. Obviously, at the time under the management of Danny Cowley, and you could definitely say that was correct. They were certainly inconsistent this season. The thing with Cowley, I do like him as a manager. It was just ultimately the case of him taking Pompey as far as he could, and he ended up getting the sack, or did he? I don't know whether he walked away. You know, he resigned as the job. I don't know, but anyway, he left. And yeah, I think rightly so, to be honest with you. They just needed to get out of the rut, and they did end up missing out on the playoffs in 8th place. They did improve in the second half of the season, but yeah, inconsistency definitely hit them. They only got beat 10 times, so they were a difficult side to beat, but 19 draws. John Mousinho is obviously their manager now. It's going to be interesting to see how he fares over the summer, what he's going to be able to do. Colby Bishop, obviously nicking him from Accrington Stanley. What a signing he was. Absolutely incredible. 24 goals, 5 assists in all competitions. No player in the team came any close to Bishop's tally. Some decent players in that Pompey side, but inconsistency has let them down massively this season, and yeah, I was ultimately right with them missing out on the playoffs. Not too far off of this one. I'm quite happy with that prediction. Oh, Jesus. Now we get into the playoffs and we get into what is by far the worst prediction of this video, and probably the worst prediction I've made in a very long time. In 6th place, Milton Keynes Dons. Oh, what an absolute blunder of a prediction. That's horrible. That is absolutely horrible. They have ended up finishing in 21st, but I don't think many people expected that. I don't think anyone expected them to go down. I mean, yes, they lost key players, Scott Twine and Harry Darling being the main ones. You know, how good were they? And they signed a lot of players in the summer. Liam Manning, of course, still in charge. The fact that they missed out on automatic promotion last season was criminal, and the fact that they missed out on promotion entirely, losing in the semi-finals to Wycombe, I think it was criminal in itself. And I just felt, you know what, they're going to be able to keep up that momentum, and how bloody wrong was I? 21st, did not expect them to go down whatsoever. Ultimately, their recruitment was just an absolute shambles. They really, really did not recruit well. Some decent players amongst that side, you know, Moe Issa, 13 goals, 3 assists, expected to leave the club. He's, yeah, no doubt a League One player. 11 wins all season, 44 goals, really struggled. I don't know who their manager is at the moment. I think Jackson is his name, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, disastrous season for MK Dons. In 5th place, I predicted another newly relegated side, that being Derby County. And this one does slightly frustrate me because I did actually have initially Derby outside the playoffs. The reason being is, of course, they just come out of administration. They obviously have new ownership. They've signed a lot of players over the summer. Obviously, that team needs to gel. We've seen it with Ipswich in the past, you know, how they signed loads of players. And obviously, the players just didn't gel in time. It took them a while to gel. And, you know, while the names that Derby were able to recruit, I mean, Paul Warne as manager, fantastic appointment, as a track record of getting teams promoted. And then the players they signed, I mean, David McGoldrick, Conor Hourihane at League One level, that is just stupid. And then, you know, James Collins, Nathaniel Mendez-Lang, Jason Knight, Louis Sibley, you know, they've got some absolutely brilliant players. Erin Cashin and Curtis Davis, another ones I'm thinking off the top of my head there. You know, they had a lot of key players and a lot of hugely named players going into this season, but of course I felt that team needed to gel. But what made me put them in the playoffs was those names that they were able to recruit. You know, that the ownership did really, really well, and it did look like they were going to comfortably finish in the playoffs. They just hit poor form at the wrong time, and they ended up missing out on the playoffs in 7th place. A disastrous end to the season, really. A huge capitulation. You know, hit form at the wrong time, as I said. But they had some really impressive players. You know, some of those players should not be playing at League One level. You know, McGoldrick, as I said, Hourihane, and some ridiculous players. And it's going to be interesting to see how they fare next season, if their ownership can keep that recruitment up and they can keep those key players going into next season. I've no doubt they'll be one of the favourites for the title next season, not just for promotion outright. But in 4th place, I predicted the Tractor Boys, Ipswich Town, Kieran McKenna's side. I felt that this season had to be their year. I think I said it in the video, you know, in my initial predictions. It had to be their year this year. And I think with the players that they signed, you know, the players they'd added in the summer to the players that they'd already had, the recruitment that they've done over the past 2 seasons, the investment that they've made, it finally was Ipswich's year. And they have finished, not in the playoffs, but in 2nd place. They have gone up automatically, deservedly so as well. 98 points. Incredible season. Kieran McKenna, what a job he's done, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how Ipswich do alongside Plymouth in the Championship next season. The highest scoring team in the league with 101 goals, the best defensive team in the league as well with 35 goals conceded. The only thing that let them down in terms of them getting the title was too many draws. They drew way too many games, and that ultimately is what cost them the title to Plymouth Argyle. But they had some really impressive players. I mean, to name a few players here with their recruitment: Connor Chaplin, 29 goals, 5 assists, unbelievable season at this level. Freddie Ladapo, great player. Leif Davis, huge impact as well, coming in from Leeds, a really good season for him. And then the likes of Marcus Harness, Wes Burns, George Hurst, who done brilliantly on loan at League One level last season. Nathan Broadhead, who was superb at Sunderland, they've got him permanently as well. So they really, really are building for the future with the players that they've signed, and they've got a really exciting squad going into the Championship season. And yeah, really impressive season, really well done. Finally Ipswich's year. And then closing off the playoffs in 3rd place, I went with Ian Evans' Bolton Wanderers, and I'll just get into it right now because I gave it away with the Barnsley prediction. They did end up finishing in 5th, so not massively far off again with that one. I'm quite happy with that. I knew going into the season that Ian Evans, you know, the way he likes to organise that team, he gets that team playing, and the players that, again, they recruited in the summer and the players that they kept along from last season, I thought it was going to be a solid season, and they've done exactly that. I didn't do as well as I thought that they would. Obviously, I predicted them to finish 3rd, they finished 5th, but still, nevertheless, in the playoffs. Dion Charles, brilliant season, 18 goals. Connor Bradley, obviously being Marlon Fossey's replacement, who was brilliant last season from Fulham. I felt that was going to be a big hole to fill, and they certainly replaced him well with Connor Bradley from Liverpool. I think it was 6 goals and 4 assists for him this season. Obviously, Ricardo Santos as well, Aaron Morley. Solid season for Ian Evans, and like I said, they currently are 1-1 with Barnsley. And now we get into the top 2. Who did I predict to go up automatically from League One this season? In 6th place, we have the 3rd and final newly relegated side, Posh, Peterborough United. Grant McCann at the time, need I say more? Him as manager, obviously got them promoted with Hull City a couple seasons ago. I felt that in itself was going to be a big reason for them to go up, and obviously with the players that they had as well going into it, they have just a solid League One team. and I felt that there was no reason why they weren't going to go up. And yeah, pretty disappointing season for their front, you'd have to say, in terms of their automatic challenge. They did finish in the playoffs, finishing in 6th, but yeah, a bit disappointing going into it. But yeah, wow, I still can't get over their playoff first leg against Sheffield Wednesday. Absolutely ridiculous, you know, beating them 4-0 at home. A very weird season for Peterborough this year. Obviously, Grant McCann getting sacked and Darren Ferguson getting the job again. Him coming back to get, I still can't get over that, and why they've reported him so many times over the years, and he's got the job again. But yeah, again, I mean, I said it earlier on, you know, they've got a solid League One team, and the players that they've got, I mean, Johnson Clark-Harris, 27 goals, 5 assists, unbelievable player at this level, and should never be playing at League One level. He's a solid Championship player. Ephron Mason-Clark, great season as well, 10 goals, 7 assists, been really impressed by him. Jake Taylor, 9 goals from midfield, as well as assists as well, 9 goals, 9 assists, going into the second leg tonight as well at Hillsborough at the time of recording this video. Going to be very interesting to see how that leg plays out. I doubt Wednesday will be able to recover. Who, as you probably would have worked out by now, I did predict to win the league. I felt that there was absolutely no way that Wednesday would not go up automatically at the very least. The very minimum that I expected from them was to go up automatically. I mean, Darren Moore as manager, the players that they signed in the summer, Will Vauxhall, Malik Wilkes, Michael Smith, Michael Hikwe, and then obviously keeping the likes of Barry Bannon, Fasayo Deli-Bashiru, Lee Gregory, Josh Windass, just to name a few. They've got some unbelievable players in that team, and the fact that they didn't go up automatically and they bottled it in the fashion that they did is ridiculous. They finished in 3rd place. How do you finish with 96 points and don't go up automatically? And even more so, finish 19 points ahead of the team you're playing in the playoffs in Peterborough and get slapped 4-0 on the first leg. It's just, football's a funny game. Football is a very, very funny game. Massive capitulation for Wednesday. They look pretty much nailed on to be playing League One football, which, if you would have had a look at the recruitment, like I said, I think a lot of content creators like myself had Wednesday to go up, and rather convincingly as well. But yeah, really disappointing end to the season, and yeah, they look set for League One football next season.
Oh, my chest! I can't breathe! I can't breathe! Oh shit! Oh shit! My chest is going.
So there you have it, guys. That is my predictions for the League One season. Ultimately, there are some close ones in there. There are some close ones, and like I said, despite not getting a single one correct, I have actually done better. That is it for this video, guys. Hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, can you possibly leave a like, subscribe if you are new to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you're notified of every time I upload a new video. How do you guys think I did? Let me know in the comments below. Scold me all you want for my lack of ball knowledge. It's just a given, really, on this channel. There are a lot of stinkers year in, year out, and like I said, this is the first time in this channel's history that I've not got a single prediction correct. How did you guys fare with your predictions? Let me know in the comments below. This has been Tyler Roninson. Have a nice day, and I will see you all in the next video. Take it easy, stay safe, and I'll see you all then.